Hello students, my name is Niyati Said and thanks for watching Wikipedia word videos. My topic for the presentation is the 8th section of circulatory system, that is ECG. What's the full form of ECG? Electrocardiograph. Okay. How can you define electrocardiograph or electrocardiogram? It is a graphical record of electrical variations that are produced by the heart during one heartbeat or cardiac cycle is called as electrocardiogram or ECG. Okay. The instrument which is used to record the action potential generated by the heart muscles is called as electrocardiograph or ECG machine. This is your ECG machine, and the technique was discovered by Einthoven in 1903, and that's the reason he is also called as father of electrocardiography. Okay. So what is the methodology? In this, the electrical activities of the heart are recorded as ECG machine by placing the electrodes on various locations such as chest, as you can see in this diagram, chest, wrist and ankles. Okay, chest, wrist and ankle. Okay. The two electrodes are connected to the chest of the patient above the heart, while the third electrode is a reference connection which is connected to the upper and the lower limb. Okay, and for that a conducting gel is applied between the skin and the electrodes to detect tiny impulses of few millivolts. Okay. And then the electrical activity of heart is represented in the form of a graph as a time on the x-axis against voltage displacement that is being plotted in the y-axis. Okay. So to get an ECG, a patient is connected to the machine with 3 electrical leads, one to the each wrist and to the left ankle, that monitor heart activity, and for a detailed evaluation of heart functions, multiple leads are attached to the chest region, as you can see in this picture, okay, which is connected with the ECG recording machine. Okay. Now, why is it done? An ECG gives two major kinds of information. First, by measuring time intervals on the ECG, a doctor can determine how long electrical wave takes to pass through the heart, and thus he can find out how long a wave takes to travel from one part of the heart to the next, shows if the electrical activity is normal or slow or fast or irregular. What is the second information which we get from the ECG is by measuring the amount of the electrical activity it passes through the heart muscle. A cardiologist may be able to find out if parts of the heart are too large or too overworked. Okay. So this is the reason why ECG is being done these days. Okay. Now comes pattern of ECG. A normal ECG is a series of ridges and furrows. As you can see, the ridges and furrows. Okay, it consists of a different type of waves such as P wave. As you can see, this is your P, Q, R, S and T. So it is divided into 3 parts. First is your P, then second is your QRS, and third is your T. So there are 3 different types of waves such as P wave, QRS complex and T wave. P wave, it represents the excitation or depolarization of auricle which causes auricle systole. What is auricle systole? Systole means when auricle contracts. Okay, so P wave, it is a small upward wave that represents impulse generated by SA node. SA means sinoatrial node, which is also known as pacemaker. Okay, it causes auricle depolarization and thus it results in auricle contraction. Okay, now what happens in, so see, this is your P wave and this is your P wave. When it uh, SNA node, it generates, this is your SA node. Okay, this white part is your SNA and thus it is generates impulse. Okay, and that causes auricle depolarization and thus it results in the auricle systole or auricle contraction. Okay, now comes QRS complex. This is your Q, R and S complex. What happens in this? Activation of the ventricles takes place. It begins as a downward deflection, continues as a large upright triangular wave, as you can see that this is a upright triangular wave, and end as a downward wave, as you can see, and it ended as a downward wave. Okay, it represents a spreading of impulse from SA node to AV node and then to the bundle of His and Purkinje fibers. It causes ventricular depolarization and thus it results in ventricular contraction. Contraction starts shortly after Q. Okay, just after Q. By counting QRS complex that occur in a given time period, one can determine the heartbeat rate of an individual. Okay, one can determine the heartbeat rate of an individual. Now comes your T wave. T wave represents the repolarization of ventricles. It is a broad upward wave, as you can see. This is a broad upward wave which represents ventricular repolarization and thus it results in ventricular relaxation also. Okay, so your P, R and T, these are your being above the baseline, they are called as positive waves. Which are positive waves? P, R and T, because they are above the baselines. What about QS? They are just below the baseline, so they are called as negative waves. R being the tallest wave and T is the broadest and the rounded wave. Please note that. And deviations in the ECG indicates the abnormality or disease. So ECG has great clinical significance. Okay, let's see P wave once again. P wave, it represents the wave of depolarization that spins from the SA node throughout the auricle and is usually last for 0.08 to 0.1 second in duration. Okay, and the brief isoelectric period after the P wave, it represents the time in which the impulse is traveling within the AV node. Okay, and the bundle of His also. So the auricle rate can be calculated by determining the time interval between P waves. Okay, now comes QRS complex. It represents ventricular depolarization. Ventricular rate can be calculated by determining the time interval between QRS complex. I forgot to attach how ventricular rate is calculated. So the duration of the QRS complex, it usually lasts for 0.06 to 0.1 second, and this relatively short duration indicates the ventricular depolarization. Okay, now comes ST. Okay, or you can say the ST segment. The isoelectric period, it follows the QRS, is the time at which the entire ventricle is depolarized and roughly corresponds to the plateau phase of the ventricular action potential. Okay, and now what about the T wave? T wave, it represents ventricular repolarization. It is a broad upward wave that represents ventricular repolarization and thus it results in ventricular relaxation. Okay, Sometimes a small positive U wave may also be seen following the T wave. Okay, this wave represents the last remnants of the ventricular repolarization, but that is seen very rarely. Okay, so inverted or prominent U wave indicates underlying pathology or condition that affects the repolarization. Okay, so this comes to an end. Stay tuned and keep watching Edupedia Word videos.